We're living in the most challenging times for business and economics than we have experienced in our lifetimes, and only the fit will survive. The race is on and you're in it, and if you're not committed to winning, to conquering against all odds, you will be brushed aside and passed over by people and companies more determined to win than you are. That's according to our next guest, Daniel Tolson, and he joins us now. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me here today.
Them's fighting words. Look, you know, this is unprecedented. I mean, that is pretty full-on statements by you.
Well, they are, and it's never been any different in the past 6,000 years. For 6,000 recorded history, we've been trying to figure out what makes some people more successful than others. And in times like this, the tough just get going. That's what they do.
Well, that's true. I mean, look, why do you think it is 99% of the adult population have a simultaneous fear of criticism and rejection?
Approval. What we say is that approval is that babies cry for it and men will die for it. Oprah Winfrey, she's delivered more than 37,000 interviews over the past 5 years. And at the end of every interview, people
I know what the answer to this is. Did I do okay? How did I do?
I do okay?
Yep.
How did I do? And so the reason why people ask this question is because they want to feel what they said matters. And when the response is positive, their level of self-esteem and their self-worth goes up. When the response is negative and they don't get the approval of others, it triggers off the fear of criticism and the fear of rejection. And what happens is they feel worthless. So men die for it and babies cry for it and people starving for approval.
So what do you think COVID-19 has done for this sort of situation? Has this amplified the fear, do you think?
Failing to plan is planning to fail. And I was doing some research earlier this week, and we actually have a 1 in 28 chance of dying from a lower respiratory disease. But we only have a 1 in 9,821 chance of dying in an aircraft accident. So in my previous career, I was cabin crew, and we would practice and rehearse safety and emergency procedures before every flight. And if you've been on an aircraft in the past couple of years, you'll realise that the crew will play a safety video just to prepare you in the event of an unfortunate event of an accident. But most people assume that an accident is not going to happen to them. They assume that the cabin crew will be there to save their lives. So why this pandemic has amplified these fears of loss, these fears of the unknown and the fear of the future, is because we're 350 times more likely to die from a lower respiratory disease than in an aircraft disaster, and we have not planned for it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. We were actually talking about this on the show earlier in the week, and that, you know, Australia has pivoted to move, on the coronavirus crisis very quickly. It's been managed very well, but still our death toll number, which, you know, is still a tragedy, but is only at 98. Whereas last year we had 900 people die from the flu, but it wasn't getting talked about in this way, which is obviously adding to the fear.
What happens with fear? It triggers off a survival mechanism. And there's one thing in COVID-19, and it's the same for every living organism on the planet, is the will to survive. So what happens is when we're bombarded with these messages of fear, we start to fear the loss of our life. And so we become hyper aware. It gets into our reticular activation system. Every conversation becomes about survival, but it doesn't come about goals or other things that we want to achieve. It's just, how do we live another day? How do we keep the door open for another day?
And I mean, look, it's natural that everyone's feeling a little bit stressed, a little bit anxious with that unknown. But I guess, how can you identify the triggers for if you're feeling, you know, more stressed than usual? How can you sort of stop yourself sabotaging, you know, your sort of thoughts and keep yourself on track and keep that fear in check?
You've got to throw away your plan Bs. And the Wisconsin School of Business says that if you consider a plan B for as little as 10 minutes, that's enough to sabotage your success. As I mentioned earlier on, we've been studying success for 6,000 years, and we can condense that down into 5 simple principles. The first thing that we're going to do to avoid sabotage and self-sabotage is to decide exactly what we want to become in our life, what we want to do in our life, and what we want to have. The second thing we need to do is we need to create a plan and have daily activities that move us towards those goals. The third thing we need to do is we need to stop on a regular basis and have a look around. And we have to have a look around and make sure that we're on the right road. And there's an old Turkish proverb that says, no matter how far you've gone down the wrong road, turn and go back. The fourth thing that we have to do as a nation moving forward is we have to move out of our comfort zones and we have to face our fears squarely. And we then have to focus on what we want. And there's an old saying is that we become what we think about most of the time. And how we start is by throwing away the plan Bs.
Look, this is fascinating stuff, Daniel. If people want to get in touch with you and find out more about this, how can they do that?
The easiest way to find me in COVID-19 is at my website, which is www.danieltolson.com.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Daniel, and I'm glad I got that Oprah question right.
You avoided the fear of rejection.
Tick, tick. Thanks for your time this afternoon.
Day.